Welcome. Take a breath. Let the noise of the day drift gently to the edges. Right now, there's nothing you need to carry. Nothing to figure out. This is your time to rest. To be still. And to let your heart settle into a story that's been waiting for you. Tonight, we return to an ancient city. High-walled, watchful, bracing for war. A city unaware that salvation would come. Not through weapons or strength, but through the quiet courage of a woman named Rahab. This is a story of trust, of mercy, and of bold faith born in an unlikely place. This is the story of Rahab and the two spies. The city of Jericho stood still in the hot, dry air of Canaan. Its thick stone walls had watched the horizon for days now. Nervous eyes scanning the distance. Rumors had reached them. Strange tales of a people wandering the desert. Led by a mysterious cloud and pillar of fire. They had crossed the Red Sea, the stories said. They had defeated great kings with little more than faith and obedience. And now, they had crossed the Jordan. They were near. Inside Jericho, tension clung to the streets. The markets were quiet. The guards stood taller. Children were hushed and hurried indoors. Everyone sensed it. Something was coming. And among them lived a woman named Rahab. Her house was built into the city wall itself. A space on the edge. Neither fully inside nor out. Rahab was known in Jericho. She was a prostitute. A woman others passed by with a glance but spoke little of. But Rahab saw everything. She heard the whispers. Watched the strangers. Read the fear in men's faces. And somewhere inside, a question had begun to grow. Not about the army approaching, but about their God. This God of Israel. The one who parted seas. Who brought down Pharaoh. Who fed his people in the wilderness. She had never met him. But she had heard. And she believed. One evening, just as the sun was sinking low, two strangers arrived at her door. Dust on their clothes. Eyes sharp with caution. Movements precise. They were not from Jericho. They were Israelites, spies. Sent quietly to observe, to listen, to prepare the way. And Rahab knew. Something inside her stirred. Not fear, but certainty. This was her moment. She welcomed them in. Not with suspicion, but with quiet resolve. Because even if she didn't fully understand their mission, she knew whose hand they carried with them. The two men stepped inside the house. Rahab closed the door behind them. Outside, the street murmured with its usual rhythm. But inside her home, the future of two nations hung silently in the balance. She had a choice. She could send them away, turn them in, protect her own life. Or she could hide them, and with them, place her hope in the God she had never seen, but somehow already trusted. She chose. She took them in. The night fell thick and warm over Jericho. Torches flickered in alleyways. Shadows dancing on sun-baked stone. In the quiet, something shifted. There was a knock at Rahab's door. Firm. Authoritative. Too sharp for a neighbor. Too deliberate to ignore. She opened it slowly. Just enough to see them. Soldiers. City guards, sent from the king. Their voices were urgent. "Bring out the men who came to you," one of them said. "We know they entered your house. They've come to spy out the whole land." Rahab's breath caught. This was the moment she had already imagined. And decided for. She met their eyes, calm. "Yes," she said. "The men came to me. But I didn't know where they were from. And when it was time to close the city gate at dark, they left. I don't know where they went. If you hurry, you may catch up with them." She pointed toward the road that led out of the gate. The soldiers didn't question her. They turned, shouted to one another, and rushed into the night in pursuit. And when they were gone, Rahab turned back inside, up the stairs, onto the roof. There, hidden beneath bundles of flax, the two spies waited in silence. Their eyes met hers as she lifted the covering. She didn't speak at first. There was no need to. Everything she had risked was written in the stillness between them. Her life, her family, her future. All for two men she didn't know, but whose God she believed in. Finally, she spoke. "I know that the Lord has given you this land," she said, her voice low but steady. "We've heard how he dried up the sea before you, how you defeated kings we thought unbeatable. Our hearts melted in fear. There is no courage left in anyone here because of you, because of your God." She paused, then looked at them with something more than fear. "The Lord your God is God in heaven above, and on the earth below." There it was. A confession not born in a synagogue, but on a rooftop. Not from a prophet, but from a woman who had never seen a miracle herself, only heard of them, and believed. Rahab had no proof, no theology, no place among the people of Israel. But she had faith, and it showed itself in courage. She leaned in closer now, her voice a little softer. "Now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sign. Promise that when your army comes, you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and everyone who belongs to them. Save us from death." The two men, moved by her bravery, nodded without hesitation. "Our lives for your lives," they said. "If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us this land." Outside, the city searched. Soldiers ran along the walls. Gates were closed. Lanterns moved like fireflies in the streets. But inside Rahab's home, something different stirred. A peace, a new allegiance, a turning point in a life once overlooked. She was no longer simply hiding spies. She was joining herself to a different story. One bigger than Jericho. One wider than her past. The air on the rooftop was cool and dry. The kind that settles gently after a long day of heat. Below, the city of Jericho stirred in anxious confusion. Guards shouted from gate to gate. Horses pounded the ground as they galloped into the hills. And whispers passed like smoke between doorways. The spies were here. The king is searching. No one leaves. No one hides them. But on the roof of Rahab's home, there was quiet. The flax she had laid to dry rustled faintly in the breeze. The two Israelite spies sat close together, alert, but no longer afraid. They looked at Rahab, this woman of the city, and saw not only a protector, but a bridge, a doorway between two worlds. Her faith had opened a path where none had existed before. Rahab knelt beside them. Her fingers trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. "You must leave tonight," she whispered. "If you wait until morning, the city gates will be watched more closely. There's no safety beyond the walls in daylight." The men nodded. They had come with a plan, but now they followed hers. She led them down from the rooftop, through the dim interior of her home, until they reached a small shuttered window. It opened to the outer side of Jericho's massive wall. A sharp drop below, but no guards in sight. Rahab pulled a long cord of rope from beneath a woven basket. Its threads were coarse and dyed red. Not bright red, but deep, earthen, like dried blood or desert clay. She tied it carefully to a hook in the stone, then unwound it through the window. Her hands moved with practiced ease. This wasn't the first time she'd helped someone escape. But this time, it meant something else entirely. As the rope unfurled, one of the spies turned to her. "You saved us," he said. His voice was quiet, earnest. Rahab didn't look at him right away. She was staring into the night, toward the hills beyond the city, toward the direction from which Israel's camp lay. "No," she said softly. "I believed. I believe in your God. And I know He will come. This city's walls won't stop Him. Not when He has already parted seas." There was a pause, a stillness in the space between them. Then she turned. "When He does," she continued, "remember this house. Remember this rope." The red cord hung like a quiet flag of surrender, a signal in the dark. "Leave it in the window," the other spy said. "Don't take it down. When we return, that thread will be your sign. No one inside this house will be harmed." And so, Rahab lowered them down into the quiet night. She watched them disappear into the shadows, their silhouettes vanishing between the outer rocks and shrubs that skirted the base of the wall. Then she closed the window, but left the rope tied. The red cord fluttered slightly in the wind, a symbol of everything she was risking, and everything she was choosing. Back inside her home, Rahab sat alone. The streets outside were restless. There would be more knocks, more questions. But for now, she had peace. The scarlet thread hung outside her window, a lifeline, not just for herself, but for her family. She would bring them here. All of them. Her father, her mother, her brothers, her sisters, anyone who would listen, anyone willing to believe that deliverance was possible. And somehow, deep inside, she knew this scarlet thread meant more than protection. It was a mark of grace, of a God who saw her, not for her past, but for her faith. The night had passed. The rope had been drawn back in, but the red cord remained, hanging still from Rahab's window, a silent thread of faith, woven into stone. Across the hills, the two spies moved quickly. They didn't return to the road, but hid in the hills, just as Rahab had advised. For 3 days they waited, hidden in rocky crevices, watching the movement of Jericho's patrols from afar. The soldiers searched, but their chase had been misled by Rahab's words. And when the third day came, the spies emerged from their hiding place, crossed the Jordan, and returned to the camp of Israel. Joshua listened carefully as they spoke. They told him everything. How they had entered the city, how Rahab had hidden them, what she had said, what she had seen, and what she believed. And they ended with words that sent a quiet stillness across the camp. "The Lord has surely given the whole land into our hands. All the people are melting in fear because of us." But Joshua's mind held on to something deeper. A woman, a house in the wall, a scarlet cord tied with faith. He had not met Rahab, but her name was now written on his heart, not just as a helper of spies, but as a daughter of promise. Back in Jericho, Rahab prepared. She didn't know the day. She didn't know the hour. But she believed the promise. So she gathered her family. First her father, then her mother, her brothers, hesitant at first, then convinced by her urgency. her sisters, and those they loved, all under one roof. Some nights the house was loud, crowded with nervous energy. Other nights were quiet, filled with waiting. The scarlet cord still hung, its thread catching light in the breeze. Sometimes Rahab sat near the window, watching it sway, whispering to herself, "You are our sign. You are our shelter. You are the thread that holds us." From her place in the wall, she could see far across the plain. And one morning, in the early haze of dawn, she saw something on the horizon. A movement, dust rising in slow formation. An army. Israel had come. She didn't panic. She didn't run. She closed the shutters gently and turned to her family. "They're here," she said. Some stood. Some gasped. Some wept. But Rahab remained still. Her eyes moved to the window, to the thread still hanging there, red against the stone. A promise made. A faith kept. They would stay inside. They would trust. And in her heart, Rahab whispered again. Not to herself this time, but to the God she had never seen, but already loved. "You remember. You see us. You keep your word." The sun rose slowly over Jericho. A dry wind passed between the buildings, rustling shutters, stirring dust. The city stirred uneasily. From every rooftop, eyes turned outward. The army of Israel had arrived. But they didn't attack. They didn't shout or charge or catapult stones. Instead, they walked. A strange procession. Quiet. Ordered. 7 priests at the front, carrying trumpets made of ram's horns. Behind them, the Ark of the Covenant. And behind the Ark, a line of soldiers stretching long across the plain. They circled the city once and left. The people of Jericho were confused. Some scoffed. Some waited for an ambush. But nothing came. The next day, they returned. Again they walked. Once. Then gone. Day after day. 6 days in total. This strange ritual repeated. Around the walls. No weapons raised. No word spoken. Inside Rahab's house, they waited. Her father paced the floor. Her mother sat with her hands folded tight. Her brothers watched the sky. The children played in whispers. But Rahab? She sat near the window. The red cord still hung there, gentle and silent, like a flame that would not go out. She didn't know the plan. She didn't need to. She had already chosen her side. Each day the army passed, and each time they did, her heart beat a little louder. Not in fear, but in expectation. She remembered their words. Tie this scarlet cord in the window, and gather your family inside. Do not leave the house. On the 7th day, something changed. They came earlier. Their pace was quicker. And this time, they didn't leave after one lap. They circled the city once. Then again. And again. 7 times in total. People on the walls looked down. Confused, agitated. Mocking the procession. And then, silence. The final lap was done. The priest stood still. The ark rested in place. And in that moment, as the entire city held its breath, the trumpets blew. A blast like thunder rolled over Jericho. Not noise, but power. Then came the shout. Tens of thousands of voices, rising in unison, shaking the very ground beneath the stones. the walls began to tremble. Cracks appeared. Dust rose like smoke. Stones shifted, then gave way. The unthinkable happened. The mighty walls of Jericho fell. But not Rahab's house. Not the room built into the wall. Not the window with the scarlet cord. As the outer walls crumbled like sand, her home stood, alone among the ruin. Not because it was stronger, not because it was hidden, but because of a promise, and a God who keeps his word. The chaos outside roared. Screams, horns, rubble. But inside Rahab's house, there was stillness. They clung to one another. They prayed. They waited. The world around them had collapsed. But the promise held. And soon, footsteps approached. Not with swords raised, but with purpose. Two men entered. Faces she recognized. The spies. They looked around, counted the family members, and nodded. "Come," one said gently. "This is the moment. You are safe." The dust of Jericho still hung in the air. Rubble lined the streets where proud walls once stood. The sounds of conquest were fading. The shouts of soldiers. The creak of crumbling stone. The silence that follows judgment. But in the heart of that broken place, Rahab and her family walked forward, led gently by the two men she had once hidden. They stepped over broken rock and shattered gates, past splintered beams and empty homes. And with each step, Rahab crossed a line, from the old life into the new. She didn't look back, not at the house in the wall, nor the city that had once ignored her, judged her, labeled her, everything that had defined her before. Her profession, her people, her past, had been stripped away with the walls of Jericho. What remained was her faith, a scarlet cord in the window, a promise remembered, and a God who saw her not for where she came from, but for what she believed. The Israelites welcomed her into their camp. She was not cast aside or forgotten. She was protected, honored, given a place among them, and eventually, a place in their history. Rahab would go on to live among the people of Israel. She would marry, raise a family, and pass on her story. A story of trust, of risk, of rescue. Generations later, one of her descendants would change the world. His name was Jesus. Yes, Rahab the outsider, the woman of the wall, the protector of spies, became part of the lineage of the Messiah. She is named in the Gospel of Matthew, a woman whose faith crossed boundaries, whose courage rewrote her identity, whose scarlet thread became a symbol of the grace that reaches beyond walls, and far beyond what anyone expects. Hers was not a perfect story, but it was redeemed. And that is the heartbeat of the God who saved her. As this story comes to a close, let that truth rest gently over you, that no wall is too high, no past too heavy, no label too strong, for God to reach beyond. Rahab's courage didn't come from power. It came from trust, a quiet belief that this God, this unseen, holy, sovereign one, was not only able to save, but willing. She hung a scarlet cord in faith, and God responded with mercy. So wherever you are tonight, whatever story you've lived, remember this: you are never beyond grace, and you are never forgotten. Faith can grow in the most unexpected places, and redemption often begins with one quiet, brave decision. Good night, and may you rest under the shelter of a promise kept, just as Rahab did. knowing that the God who protected her is watching over you. Still,